Hello everybody, welcome to Dungeons & Drams. Today we're going to be talking about creating books and notes and other little written pieces of information, or maybe pictures too. All of these things are fun things to have in your world to produce a little extra lore or a little extra information, and if your players roll high enough, it feels good to be able to give them more than just, oh, you found a piece of paper and it says go west. You know, you want something a little bit more interesting. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to utilize AI to help us, but we're going to write a prompt that will actually prompt us for our own ideas so that we don't have to lean so heavily on AI. I've heard you guys, I know a lot of you enjoy these AI videos, but I also know a lot of you don't want AI to be so involved. So I think this is a good little middle ground to utilize AI as a tool rather than having it do all of the work for us. So let's go ahead and check out the prompt. The initial prompt reads as follows, and all of this will be available on my Patreon for free. It will be a public post, so if you want to just kind of copy and paste it from there, go check it out. If you can want to consider joining the channel and supporting, I'd really appreciate it. All right, I'm a dungeon master playing Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. I'd like to produce a book that will help my players better understand a part of my world. Book in this case being a little generic, and you'll see why. I may give you the style of book, historical text, religious manuscript, a wizard's grimoire, a bestiary, a traveler's journal, etc. I may give you the name of the author and some information about them. This information should alter the tone of the book. For example, they may be biased, have certain experiences, whatever. I may provide the purpose of the book, teach a lesson, reveal a plot twist, reveal lore, etc. So it's always good to say, like, I want this to do this thing. It will definitely help out with this prompt. I may provide a few key pieces of information that I would like you to add to the book. I may provide a physical description of the book, the material it's made of, how old or damaged it looks, anything magical. I would like you to prompt me for one of these things at a time and any other points of clarity that you need. Okay, so we've got our prompt down. Let's go ahead and submit that, and now it's going to prompt us back for what we want to do. Now, what I've kind of come up with as a good little test here, and we'll do a couple of these, but the first one is going to be a note you find on a dead goblin. The purpose of this note is going to be to allude to the capture of the princess of a nearby kingdom. I say you should make up the name for the person and the kingdom. Now, if you were running your own game, you'd probably have these ideas in your head, but we're just doing this as a tutorial. The goblin should capture the princess, and she should not be harmed. The rest of the convoy are irrelevant and can be killed if it helps accomplish the task. Now, the reason I put that in there, I don't know if it's going to prompt me for more information like that, but I can give it whatever I want, and it will kind of interpret what I've told it and decide whether it needs to continue prompting me for other things. For example, in this one, I could have said, it's a piece of parchment that looks really dirty and it has a seal on it or something like that, in which case it's probably not going to ask me what the note looks like. All right, great. Now that, what tone do you want to have for the note? Should it be more crude and straightforward, showing the goblin's simple nature, or written by a more intelligent goblin or outside party, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so I'm going to have this written essentially by a political rival of the king, who wanted you to the goblins to capture the daughter. So simple enough, and I would think that the tone would be probably threatening, but also refined and maybe a bit, like fancy. I don't know, for lack of a better term. Let's try this. The tone of the note should be threatening with an air of refinement to it. This is from a noble of a rival house who detests the king, and that is why he wants the princess captured. It's asking me if I have a name for the noble in mind, and I'm not sure that I do. Would I like it to create one? Probably. Additionally, do you want any specific details about the rival between this noble and the king to be hinted at in the note? Okay, I don't really have any of that information, but I'm going to tell it to make up its own, assuming that in your world you would have this information. Next, would you like the note to have specific physical characteristics, such as the material it's written on or condition, blah, blah, blah. I got a little creative on this one. I want this note to be fairly new, although very dirty. It should have a seal on it that detects when anyone other than the goblin is holding it. This will cause the note to incinerate itself if the trap is not properly disarmed using a successful Arcana check of 12 or dispelling magic. I want the players to have a hint that this may be a magical piece of parchment before they pick it up. The idea being, if I'm a rival noble or something, and I'm going to capture the king's daughter, I don't want this note to fall into anybody else's hands other than the person I gave it to. I mean, frankly, I probably wouldn't put it on a note anyway, but maybe the goblins wanted it. Who cares? So I'm going to use magic to trap this thing, and that's going to make it a little bit more interesting. I set a fairly low DC of 12 because I'm expecting if you're killing goblins, you're probably not like level 20, although that could be fun. It asked me if I want to give the players a hint as to how to detect if this thing's magical, like if I have any preference of how I want that to be displayed. I kind of don't, so I'm going to just tell it to make up whatever it wants, but I'm also going to ask it to give me a way to help the players detect it. Like, What kind of check should I be looking for here? Is it going to be an investigation while they're checking out the rest of the goblin, or is it going to be they pick up the note and, before they open it, they see it shimmer or something like that? I'm not sure what I want the magical effect to be. I'd like you to describe it and also come up with how to help the players potentially detect the magical trap prior to opening it. What it gives me is a little bit long, but basically there's some ravens on it. If you look close enough, they're moving. If you are trained in magic or arcana or whatever, then you might be able to see this, or if you have a high enough passive perception. So we'll just leave this here and continue on with generating the book. It gives a synopsis of the description of the physical note and then asks me to continue with the content. All right, here's a draft. So we're going to read through it real quick and see if there's anything we want to change. So the content of the note. To the Goblin War Chief Ragthor, the time has come for you to prove your worth to the House of Valanor? I don't know. This is why it's good to read this stuff ahead of time. Don't just generate it on the fly. You are to intercept the convoy of Princess Alira of Thalendor. She is to be taken alive, unharmed, and delivered to me. Her father, King Haldrin, will soon learn what it means to cross the... this is like way too wordy. I do not like this yet. So, the Valinor name, the rest of her pitiful entourage is of no consequence. Dispose of them however you see fit. If any should attempt to prevent you from completing your task, ensure they meet a swift end. Remember, this girl is not to be touched. I want her pristine when I negotiate her return, or perhaps I'll keep her for myself. Do not fail me, Ragthor. My patience wears thin. Signed, Lord Daimir Valinor. Okay. This note includes the following: Princess Alira of Thalendor, the captive King Haldrin, her father, Lord Daimir, whatever. Now, interesting, it says that this might violate the usage policies, which is interesting. I don't really feel like worrying about why. Maybe one of these people exists somewhere else. Okay, but here's what we're going to do. I don't love the tone here. I think it's too formal. This is a person writing a note to a goblin boss. That goblin boss wants to see, like, here's some shinies, go capture this princess, don't touch her or I'm going to kill you. So I'm going to reprompt this a little bit and see what we come up with. Let's try this. This sounds much too formal. The note should be shorter, to the point, still threatening, but meant to be read by a goblin boss. Eloquence is not needed or likely understood by the goblins. Hopefully that gives it a little bit more direction, and that's fine. It came up with a bunch of stuff to start off with, and I could probably use that. I'd probably change the names because they're hard to pronounce. But let's see, this is a lot shorter. Content of the note. Ragthor, get the princess. She's the only one that matters. No harm to her. The rest, kill them if you need to. Bring her to me or you'll wish you had died with them. Perfect. That's way more exciting and interesting and probably vague enough, actually, to kind of pose some questions. So I think that that's actually very good. Let's confirm that this is good and see what it comes up with as a last little bit. Let's go kind of classic movie trope and say the goblin has like half the money and we'll get more after delivery of the princess. So, you've been paid. The rest comes when you bring me the princess. She's the only one that matters. No harm to her. The rest, kill them if you need to. Fail and you wish that you had died with them. Lord Daimir Valinor. I think that's perfect. Okay, excellent. So this is just what we did to get to a note that you could find at a goblin camp. Now, this was a bit lengthy for a note. If I were finding a note on a goblin, I would probably just come up with it myself, although this is pretty nice. And if I do a few of these, I think I'll kind of be able to prompt it a little quicker. So this is actually another point that I want to make here, is that you could do this part way easier just by saying, write me a note that my players could find on a goblin boss from Lord Daimir Valinor about capturing a princess. Make sure that it is intimidating but brief, and mention that, you know, some of the gold has already been paid and the rest will be due upon return. And that's one little prompt that you could do, and it would basically come up with the same thing. You might have to refine it just a little bit, but that would be way shorter. What I did here, where it's got the prompts and prompts and prompts, is great for doing something a lot longer. So let's come up with kind of like I want to do a bestiary style tome for giants. Let's go giants. Like not giants. Let's go with like frost something, like an Arctic tundra, and warning about the different monsters that might be up there. So let's try this. This book will be a bestiary of monsters that can be found in a snowy region. This should reference a few monsters from Dungeons & Dragons official material. Next, would you like to provide a name for the author of this bestiary? No. They're going to go with Eldrick Frostwhisper. Good enough. I mean, I would probably workshop the name, but it doesn't matter. So they're a seasoned ranger and naturalist who has spent years studying the dangerous creatures of the frozen tundra. He harbors a deep respect for these beasts, seeing them as integral to the harsh balance of the cold wilderness. Blah, 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 blah. I think that's actually pretty good, because that's going to be a certain tone that they're going to give to the book. This guy probably, he respects the animals rather than just wants to hunt them. I think this is great. So I want this actually to be a book where I'm giving my players some information about what they're going to fight soon so that they can kind of consider it. So maybe this is more for your players who they might not be as tactical, but giving them a little bit of a heads up that like a Remoraz is going to be, I think they spit like acid or fire or something like that. Like giving them that information ahead of time will help them to know how they should prepare. So the primary purpose of the bestiary is to give my players a heads up about certain monsters' abilities, what the monsters look like and their fighting styles, who to watch out for and who is harmless. My punctuation was terrible on that one, but that's okay. We could add however many we'd like or whatever, but I picked ones that I thought were very specific to this region. Obviously, like a commoner can be in the Arctic, right? So, adult white dragon, Remoraz, winter wolf, polar bear, ice giant, and frost salamander. When I picture this, I picture a hardcover book that's probably blue in color with a white snowflake on the front. It ended up asking me if I wanted to add any magical effect to this book, and I, don't want to put anything crazy like it actually suggested resistance or protection from cold. I don't want that. In fact, I just want the book to kind of always feel cold, not uncomfortable, but just a little bit. It gives a little summary about what we're about to create. I say yes, and now it's going to do so. Now, funny thing, what it gave me is actually exactly what I asked. It gave me a description of the book and what it has in it. But that's not what I want. I want a story, or in this case, a list of monsters with some information. So I'm going to be as blunt as I can. Take all of this information and write the book for me. And there we go. We have a whole book that was written for us called Frostbitten Beasts, A Guide to the Creatures of the Frozen Wastes. Now, this is something that's going to go into all of those different animals and beasts and whatever monsters that we talked about. Adult white dragon. It's even going to tell you the danger level is do not engage unless you're prepared to die. So it goes into all of these. It has a little final word thing. I'll put this whole book up here on the Patreon, and I'll probably generate some images to go with it because it's fun to do that. All of these are something great to give in your game. I would, however, recommend not giving it to them as they're playing, unless you're playing a really long game and, reading something like this wouldn't be out of place. Maybe give this to them in between sessions so that they can take their time, read it, as we know, like half of them will, but you're going to have some bookwormy people too who really want to read this stuff. And they're going to be the ones that can shine in your next session when they know all about how the Remoraz is probably not as cold as it looks. So, all of this is some really good way to create some immersive material for your game. Consider printing it out, consider putting it on a parchment and, doing the whole coffee stain thing if you really want to. If you have a little note and you're doing in-person prompts, that's really, really fun. I'll show you here a couple of images of things that I've created for the campaign that I ran here on the channel. And, I think it came really, really well. If you use Photoshop and you kind of just, make it inverted and you remove the background and make it look like it's hand drawn. You could see up here, I did that with a couple of these massive elemental monsters. So anyway, thank you all for joining me here on Dungeons and Drams. I hope you had a great rest of your night, and cheers.